Here is something that will completely change the way you read people. Right now, somewhere in the world, a woman is screaming, "I like you," at a man, and she is using absolutely zero words. Her body is doing all the talking. Her eyes, her hands, her posture, the way she tilts her head when you say something completely ordinary. It's all a language. And the most heartbreaking part, most men walk away from that conversation thinking, "Yeah, she seems cool, that's it. Cool." Meanwhile, she drove home replaying the whole thing, thinking you weren't interested. Today, that stops. Let me tell you something that took behavioral scientists decades to fully put into words. A study published in the Journal of Nonverbal Behavior found that over 55% of all human communication happens through body language. Not words, not tone, not what someone says, just the body, just movement, just subtle, quiet signals that most people never even learn to notice. And women are on average significantly better at sending and reading these signals than men. That's not an opinion, that's neuroscience. Women's brains process emotional cues faster and more accurately, which means that when a woman is into you, she is practically writing you a love letter in a language you were never taught in school. So here is the real question. How many times have you looked back at a moment with a woman and thought, oh no, she was interested, wasn't she? That quiet girl who kept finding excuses to sit near you, the coworker who laughed a little too hard at your terrible jokes, the woman at the coffee shop who stirred her drink for 45 seconds while maintaining eye contact with you. You thought it was nothing. It was everything. This video is going to give you the translation guide. 9 specific signs, not vague, not generic, not "she smiled at you," but real research-backed, expert-confirmed signals that a woman's body sends when her feelings are very much present and very much pointed in your direction. And here is the open loop I'm going to leave dangling in the air right now. Sign number 7 is the one that even confident, socially aware men get completely wrong. Not because they're oblivious, but because it looks on the surface like the exact opposite of attraction. Stay with me until 7 because that one alone might rewrite your entire history. This one happens in less than 1/5 of a second. That's not a poetic exaggeration. That's the actual documented duration. Anthropologist Irenaeus Isle Ibisfeld spent years studying human greeting behavior across cultures from Europe to South America to remote Pacific islands. And he found one thing that was completely universal. When people see someone they are genuinely happy to see or attracted to, their eyebrows lift briefly, almost imperceptibly, for about 150 milliseconds. It's called the eyebrow flash, and it's one of the most honest signals the human face produces because it happens before the brain's conscious filters kick in. You can fake a smile, you cannot reliably fake an eyebrow flash. So, when you walk into a room and a woman's eyebrows lift slightly the moment she sees you, before her face settles into its normal expression, that is not nothing. That is her nervous system saying, "Oh good, you're here." Before she even had the chance to play it cool, most men never catch this because they're too busy checking if a woman is smiling. Stop looking at the mouth. Watch the eyebrows first. Here is something that sounds simple, but goes incredibly, almost eerily deep. When a person is attracted to someone or feels a strong connection with them, they unconsciously start to mirror that person's movements. You lean forward, she leans forward, you pick up your drink, she picks up hers, you tilt your head to the left. Somehow within seconds, her head tilts slightly too. This is called the chameleon effect, and it was documented in a famous 1999 study by Chartrand and Barr at New York University. They found that people who were mirrored by another person during a conversation reported liking that person significantly more. And the crazy part is that neither person realized the mirroring was happening. It was all subconscious. When a woman mirrors you, she is not doing it on purpose. Her body has, without her permission, decided that it wants to be in sync with yours. Her nervous system is essentially whispering this one. This person right here, that is not something you can fake or force. You either feel it or you don't. And her body will tell the truth regardless of what her words say. The way to spot this, pay attention not to individual movements, but to patterns. If multiple things she does seem to echo what you just did about 5 to 10 seconds later, You've got a mirror, and that mirror is reflecting something very real. This one sounds strange, but bear with me, because once you see it, you will see it everywhere, and you will never be able to unsee it. Body orientation, the direction a person's feet, torso, and shoulders are pointed, is one of the most reliable indicators of where their attention and interest actually is. Not where their eyes are looking, not what they're saying, where their body is physically aimed. Research in spatial behavior, particularly work done by psychologist Albert Mibian, showed that humans instinctively orient their bodies toward people and things they want to be closer to. It's a primal navigation system. We point ourselves at what we want. So if you're in a group conversation, 3, 4, 5 people, and you notice that a woman's feet and torso are oriented toward you, even when she's technically talking to someone else, that's a very telling sign. Her body has chosen you as the focal point, even if her social obligations have her looking in another direction. Feet, especially. Feet are arguably the most honest part of the human body because most people spend zero time thinking about where their feet are pointed. The face is where we perform. The feet are where we tell the truth. Let me explain something that ethologists, scientists who study animal behavior, noticed long before it was ever applied to humans. Across dozens of species, one of the most consistent signs of attraction is self-grooming in the presence of a desired mate. Birds fluff their feathers, cats smooth their fur, and humans fix their hair. They straighten their clothes, they glance at reflective surfaces, they touch their face, they adjust their collar or their earrings or the hem of their jacket, and they do all of this in a completely unconscious panic to appear as presentable as possible because someone they are attracted to has just entered their proximity. When a woman touches or adjusts her hair when you're around, especially if she does it multiple times, that is pining. That is her body going into look-good mode without her. Consciously deciding to. It's the biological equivalent of a bird spreading its wings. The research on this is particularly clear in Dr. Monica Moore's studies on female courtship behavior, where she cataloged 52 distinct nonverbal behaviors women display when attracted to someone. Hair touching and self-grooming were among the most frequent and most reliable. Not occasional, not coincidental, frequent and specific. And here's the humorous part. Men do this too. The difference is when a man is attracted to someone and fixes his hair, he usually catches himself and gets embarrassed. Women do it so naturally that even they don't always notice they're doing it, but you will. Now, not all eye contact is created equal. And this distinction matters enormously because a lot of men misread this completely. There are essentially 3 types of eye contact. There's functional eye contact, the kind you make with a waiter or a coworker, purely practical. There's polite eye contact in the kind you maintain in conversation to seem engaged. And then there's prolonged, soft, slightly too long eye contact, the kind that has a small pause at the end before someone looks away. That third kind is the one we're talking about. Psychologist Arthur Aaron, who became famous for his research on how to make people fall in love, found that sustained mutual eye contact, specifically 2 to 4 minutes of continuous eye contact between strangers, significantly increased reported feelings of affection and connection. 4 minutes of just looking at each other, that was enough. Now, in a real conversation, 4 unbroken minutes of eye contact would be terrifying and possibly illegal feeling. But the principle holds. When a woman holds your gaze a moment longer than necessary, when the eye contact lingers just slightly past what social norms would require, she is telling you something without telling you anything. And here's the layer most men miss. Watch what happens right after she holds your gaze. If she looks down briefly before looking back up, that is classically associated with attraction and even shyness. If she looks to the side and then back, that's generally neutral. If she looks down and away and doesn't return the gaze, different story, down and back up. Remember that this one requires some nuance because context matters enormously. Touch in a professional setting is different from touch in a social setting. Touch from someone who is naturally physically affectionate with everyone is different from touch from someone who is generally reserved. But here's the principle: humans are extraordinarily selective about who they voluntarily touch. Even casual, brief physical contact, a hand on the arm, a light touch on the shoulder, a playful shove when you say something funny is not randomly distributed. We touch people we feel safe with. We touch people we want a reaction from. We touch people we are drawn to. Researcher Tiffany Field, founder of the Touch Research Institute at the University of Miami, has spent decades documenting that touch is one of the most powerful forms of human communication. And that initiated touch. Touch that someone chooses to begin without social obligation almost always carries an emotional signal. When a woman finds small, casual excuses to make physical contact with you, she touches your arm when laughing. She brushes something off your shoulder that may or may not have actually been there. She high-fives you and holds it a half second too long. These are not accidents. These are invitations. Tiny, deniable, completely real invitations. The key word there is initiated. She starts it. She doesn't have to touch you. She chooses to. That choice is the signal. This is the one I promised you at the start. This is the sign that contradicts everything most people assume about attraction. And it is the reason so many men have walked away from a woman who was deeply interested in them, thinking, "She didn't seem that into me. She barely talked." Exactly. She barely talked because you were there. Here's what happens physiologically when someone experiences attraction. The stress response activates. Cortisol rises. The prefrontal cortex, the part of the brain responsible for smooth, confident social behavior, temporarily underperforms because it's flooded with competing signals. The person becomes, in a very real biological sense, cognitively overwhelmed. This is why people who are normally funny, charming, and articulate suddenly forget their own opinions when they're around someone they're genuinely attracted to. It is not indifference. It is the exact opposite of indifference. It is the nervous system responding to something that matters to it. Dr. Helen Pfizer, a biological anthropologist at Rutgers University who has spent decades studying the neuroscience of romantic attraction, describes early-stage attraction as chemically similar to a mild obsessive state. The brain is quite literally preoccupied, which means a woman who is normally chatty and social and suddenly becomes a little quieter, a little more careful with her words, maybe even slightly awkward around you specifically. That is not rejection. That is a person trying very hard not to embarrass herself in front of someone she actually cares about impressing. The contrast is the tell. If she's loud and relaxed with everyone else and noticeably more contained with you, you are not boring to her. You are the reason her brain went offline. This was shocking to me when I first connected the dots on it. Not because it's complicated, because it's so obvious once you see it. Human memory is not a hard drive. It doesn't record everything equally. Memory is emotionally filtered. The things we remember most vividly are the things that mattered to us emotionally in the moment. This is one of the most consistent findings in cognitive psychology. Emotion dramatically enhances memory encoding. Things that triggered a feeling get stored more reliably than things that didn't. So when a woman remembers that 3 weeks ago you mentioned your dog's name is Gerald, or that you prefer your coffee a specific way, or that you've been stressed about a project at work, she is not keeping notes. Her brain filed that information because it was coming from someone who activated an emotional response in her. This is how you know the difference between someone who is professionally attentive and someone who actually genuinely cares. A colleague might remember your schedule because they have to. But no one remembers that you mentioned once in passing that your favorite movie as a kid was something specific unless they were listening in a way that only happens when someone matters to you. When she brings up something small you said in a previous conversation, something completely unnecessary for her to have retained, let me be very clear. She did not forget you between those two conversations. And the reason she didn't forget you is the same reason you're watching this right now. The last sign ties many of the others together, and it is perhaps the most intuitive, but most men still misread the full picture of what it means. Proxemics is the study of personal space, and it was developed by anthropologist Edward Hall in the 1960s. Hall identified something called intimate space, the zone within about 18 in of a person's body that is under normal circumstances reserved for people who are extremely close to us, family, close friends, people we are comfortable being vulnerable around. We protect this zone instinctively. When a woman leans towards you during a conversation, closes the physical gap between you without needing a reason to, she is on a very primal level granting you access to a space that most people never get invited into. That lean is a trust signal. It's a closeness signal. It is her body saying that your presence doesn't feel like a threat. It feels like something she wants more of. And this isn't just physical. Watch for the conversational lean, too. When she turns fully toward you in a group, when she focuses on what you're saying more intently than what anyone else is saying, when she asks follow-up questions, not because she has to, but because she wants to keep the exchange going. These are all forms of leaning in, a direction she is choosing toward you over everything else in the room. So, here's where we land. 9 signs. 9 quiet body language-based messages that a woman can be sending continuously, clearly, and completely honestly, while you're standing right there thinking she's just being friendly. The eyebrow flash that lasts 1/5 of a second. The mirroring that her nervous system starts without her permission. The body orientation that points at you even when she's looking elsewhere. The pining that her hands do automatically when you're near. The eye. Contact that lingers just a beat too long. The small unnecessary touches she finds reasons to initiate. The sudden quiet that isn't coldness. It's chemistry misfiring her circuits. The tiny details she remembers because forgetting you isn't something her brain chose to do. And the lean physical and conversational, that is really just her choosing again and again to be closer to you. Here is what I want you to do. Not subscribe, not hit a button, not any of that. Do something harder and more valuable. Think about someone specific in your life right now, someone you've been unsure about, and go back through these 9 signs and honestly count how many apply to your interactions with her. Not 1 or 2. Most people display polite behavior. I'm talking 4, 5, 6, 7 of these consistently, specifically with you. If you hit that threshold, then the uncertainty you've been feeling, that's not a reading problem. That's a courage problem. And the good news is that courage is a lot easier to build than the ability to read body language, which you now have. Now, I have to tell you about something because if you stop watching right now, you are going to miss the most important piece of this whole conversation. Everything we covered today assumes a relatively straightforward situation. A woman who is attracted to you and whose signals, though subtle, are pointing in a consistent direction. But what happens when the signals are completely contradictory? When everything about her says she wants to be near you, but she also pulls back. When she stares a little too long and then looks away like she's angry about it. When she remembers everything about you, but insists loudly that you're just friends. That is a completely different and significantly more complicated situation, and it happens more often than you'd think because attraction is not always comfortable. Sometimes a woman feels something she doesn't want to feel for reasons that have nothing to do with you. And the internal conflict that creates produces signals that look from the outside like a contradiction. The video you need to watch next is about exactly that. What it means when a woman wants you, genuinely deeply wants your presence in her life, but is fighting against those feelings with everything she has. What the signs of that internal battle look like, and critically, what the right move is when you find yourself on the other side of someone who can't quite let you in, but can't quite let you go either. It is titled, "This Means That She Wants You Too Much, But She Is Fighting Hard Against Her Feelings." And I promise you, if you thought this video changed how you read people, that one is going to change how you understand them. Hit it now.